The invitation was wrong from the start. It felt wrong in Jake's hand, for one thing. Not paper, but something thicker, like ancient parchment, with the crisp, cold snap of an October leaf. It had been tucked inside his locker's ventilation slit, a pale rectangle waiting in the morning darkness of the school hallway. There was no stamp, no address, just his full name, Jacob Allen Milroy, written in an elegant cursive that looked like dried blood under the bright lights. He'd popped the wax seal, a heavy, featureless blob of burgundy, and unfolded it. You are cordially invited to an entertainment. All Hallows Eve at sundown. 1313 Winchester Manor. That was it. No host, no RSVP, and Winchester Manor. No way, his best friend Kyle breathed, spraying Funyun dust. They were crammed onto Jake's worn-out beanbag chair, the invite sitting between them on the coffee table, like an unexploded ordnance. Dude, that's not just a prank. That's a felony prank. Winchester Manor's been condemned since our parents were in diapers. It hasn't been condemned, Jake said, though his stomach was doing a slow, cold roll. It's just empty. Historical landmark or something. It's empty because old man Carver butchered his entire family there in the 70s. With a goddamn garden trowel, dude. A trowel. You don't just throw a kegger in a place like that. Kyle, ever the voice of anxious reason, snatched up his phone. Look, Google it. The place is a toxic mold pit. Plus, ghosts and murderers. Jake looked at the invitation. An entertainment. Who the hell said that? It sounded like something from a dusty novel. He was 17. Halloween had become a dead zone, a ghost of its former self. He was too old to trick-or-treat, and his mum had vetoed Kyle's idea of dressing as sexy hot dogs. Their only other plan was to mainline horror movies and leftover fun-sized Snickers. It was pathetic. This, though, this felt different. It felt adult. I think I'm going to go, Jake said, the words surprising even himself. Go? Go where? To your grisly death? Jake, this is how horror movies start. The skeptical teen, the creepy invite, the abandoned murder house. You're the opening kill, man. It's not abandoned if someone sent an invite from it, Jake reasoned, ignoring the goosebumps racing up his arms. Maybe someone bought it, renovated it. A mysterious new billionaire in town. A mysterious new billionaire who wants to party with you. No offense, but you're wearing a Metallica shirt from 2008 and you currently have Cheeto dust on your chin. It's Funyun dust, Jake snapped, wiping his face. Look, I'm just going to check it out. I won't even go in. I'll just bike by. See if there are lights on. It's Halloween. What's the worst that can happen? Kyle just groaned and threw a handful of Funyuns into his mouth. Famous last words, man. Literally. Halloween night fell thick and heavy, the air smelling of wood smoke and rotting leaves. The suburbs were alive with the rustle of plastic capes and the high-pitched screams of miniature witches and ninjas. Jake, feeling like a hypocrite, had put on a black hoodie and smeared some of his sister's old grey eyeshadow under his eyes. Zombie light. Lane. He biked past the edge of the manicured suburbs, past the last brightly lit inflatable pumpkin, and turned onto Winchester Drive. The road itself seemed to reject the holiday. The streetlights here were dimmer, spaced further apart, casting long, ominous shadows. The pavement gave way to old cobblestone that rattled his teeth. And at the very end, looming against the dark purple sky, was the manor. Kyle had been wrong. It wasn't a dilapidated wreck. It was perfect. The black iron fence was pristine, the points sharp as spears. The lawn wasn't a tangle of weeds, but a manicured, velvet dark green. And the house, a 3-story Victorian monster of black wood, razor-sharp gables and a looming circular tower, was blazing with light. Every window was lit, not with cold white LEDs, but with the warm, flickering glow of candles. And there was music. Not the thumping bass of a high school party, but something classical. A frantic, soaring violin piece that Jake didn't recognize, but which made the hair on his arms stand up. He parked his bike behind a massive, ancient oak tree. He felt butterflies in his stomach, just checking it out. The huge, carved oak front door swung open. A girl Jake recognized, Sarah Jenkins, from his English class, dressed as a stunning, pale Marie Antoinette, laughed and disappeared inside. A moment later, Mike Wheels Johnson, the school's starting quarterback, arrived in a rented-looking pirate costume, his usual bravado looking a little thin. He, too, went inside. Okay, so it was real. It was a real party. And Sarah Jenkins was there. Jake swallowed. The fear was still there, but now it was mixed with a different, more potent teenage cocktail. The fear of missing out. He ran a hand through his hair, pulled his hood down, and walked up the stone path. The air grew colder with every step. The music was louder now, hypnotic and strange. The door was still open, just a crack. He nudged it. It swung open silently on massive, oiled hinges. The foyer was vast, dominated by a grand staircase that split in two and curved up into darkness. The walls were covered in dark red wallpaper that seemed to move. No, it was just a pattern. A pattern of swirling, thorny vines. The air smelled thick, sweet and wrong, like old perfume, dust, and a butcher's shop. And it was packed. But the people, Kyle had been right about the costumes. They were incredible. They weren't sexy anything. They were vintage. Gilded Venetian masks, heavy velvet gowns, powdered wigs and brocade jackets. Jake, in his hoodie and eyeshadow, felt like a grub who'd crawled into a box of jewels. No one spoke. They didn't mill around. They danced. In the massive ballroom to his left, couples spun in perfect, synchronized time to the frantic string music. They were graceful, silent, and all of them, every single one, wore a mask. Jake shuffled along the wall, feeling his skin prickle. He saw Sarah and Mike near a massive fireplace. They weren't dancing. They were standing perfectly still, side by side, holding delicate glasses filled with a liquid so dark red it was almost black. "Sarah?" Jake said, his voice sounding rough. She turned. Her mask was a simple, white feathered thing. Her eyes, above it, looked glassy, unfocused. "Oh, hi Jake." Her voice was a flat, airy whisper. "Isn't this a great party? The host is so generous." "Yeah, it's something. Who's the host?" Mike just stared into the fire, his pirate hat slightly askew. He took a slow, deep sip from his glass. "He'll be down soon," Sarah whispered. She leaned in, and Jake caught that smell again, stronger now, coppery and sweet. "He wanted to meet the new blood. That's what he called us. The new blood." "The new blood?" "For the party." She smiled, a slow, strange smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Try the punch, Jake. It's amazing. Makes you feel floaty." Jake looked at the crystal punch bowl on a nearby table. It was the same dark, viscid liquid. A tiny, ice-cold alarm bell went off in his head. "Where are the phones?" he thought suddenly. Not a single person was filming. No one was taking selfies. It was the most un-teenager party he'd ever seen. The music stopped. The sudden silence was a physical shock. Every masked head in the ballroom turned, in perfect unison, towards the grand staircase. A man stood at the top. He was the only one not in costume. He was tall, impossibly elegant, with strangely white skin and jet black hair slicked back from a high forehead. He wore a velvet smoking jacket, the colour of a fresh bruise. He looked both ancient and ageless, his face a mask of perfect, aristocratic beauty. His eyes, even from this distance, seemed to burn. He descended the stairs, not walking, but flowing. The silence in the room was absolute, a held breath. He stopped at the bottom and smiled. His teeth were white and perfect, save for the canines, which were just a fraction too long, a fraction too sharp. "Welcome," he said. His voice was not loud, but it filled the entire house. A smooth, resonant purr with an accent Jake couldn't place. "Welcome to my home. I'm Valerius, and I'm so very delighted you could make it." He glided into the room, his eyes scanning the crowd. He nodded at the masked dancers. "My family thanks you for your patience." Then his gaze fell on Sarah, on Mike, and finally, on Jake. The cold alarm bell in Jake's head was now a screaming siren. "The guests of honor," Valerius said, his smile widening. He was standing in front of Mike now. "You've enjoyed the vintage?" Mike nodded, his eyes as dull as marbles. "It's good, sir." "Excellent." Valerius put a long-fingered hand on Mike's shoulder. "I find it so dulls the edges. Makes the transition so much more poetic." "Transition?" Jake said, his voice cracking. Valerius looked at him. The charm was still there, but something terrible was looking out from behind his eyes. Something ancient and hungry. "Of course, young Jacob." His eyes flicked to Jake's chest, as if he could see the frantic heart beating beneath the hoodie. All things must transition. The leaf to the earth, the night to the day, and the vibrant, wonderful, spirited to the main course. He turned back to Mike. We must thank you. This night, it is so very special to us. But we grow so tired of the same old fare. The local vintage is often thin. But you are full-bodied. He leaned in. Mike didn't move. He just stared ahead, a single bead of sweat rolling down his temple. No, Jake whispered. He grabbed Sarah's arm. It was ice cold. Sarah, we have to go. Now. He tugged her. She stumbled, her glass shattering on the floor. The spell, whatever it was, broke. Her eyes cleared, and a look of pure animal terror flooded her face. Valerius frowned, a slight, annoyed sound. Rude. You are spoiling the divertissement. He didn't look at them. He just snapped his fingers. The front door, which Jake had been watching from the corner of his eye, slammed shut with the final, heavy thud of a coffin lid. A heavy iron bar dropped into place on its own. Sarah screamed in terror. That scream seemed to be a signal. The other guests, the masked, silent dancers, all stopped. And as one, they began to remove their masks. Jake's stomach turned to water. They weren't people. Not really. Their faces looked 1,000 years old. Their skin looked like it had been pulled too tight over their skull. But their mouths were the worst part. As they smiled, their lips drew back to reveal mouths full of needle-sharp teeth. Their canines elongated into horrifying, glistening fangs. Oh God, Jake breathed. Oh God, Kyle, you were right. Run, Sarah shrieked, pulling away from him and sprinting for the kitchen. Two of the guests intercepted her, moving with a speed that wasn't human. They grabbed her, and her scream was cut short as one of them, a woman in a crumbling Marie-Louise gown, buried her face in Sarah's neck. Mike, poor dumb Mike, finally unfroze. He swung his fist at Valerius. Valerius caught his fist mid-air without even looking. The sound of bones snapping was like a bundle of dry sticks. Mike howled in agony. Such energy, Valerius purred, pulling the quarterback into a grotesque embrace. Wasted. Utterly wasted. He opened his mouth, and Jake watched in frozen, paralyzing horror as the fangs descended. He had to move. Move. He broke for the stairs. It was a stupid, classic horror movie move. Never go up. But the front door was death. The kitchen was death. Up was the only way. He vaulted the banister, landing hard on the plush runner. He scrambled up, taking the stairs 3 at a time. Behind him, he heard a grotesque ripping sound, followed by a dull thud. He didn't look back. He reached the second-floor landing. A long, dark hallway stretched before him, lined with closed doors. Such a lively one, Valerius's voice echoed up the stairwell, amused. He will be the dessert, laughter, but not human. He felt like a gazelle escaping from a lion. Jake ran. He grabbed the first doorknob and twisted it. Locked. The second, locked as well. The third door swung open. He threw himself inside, slammed it, and fumbled for a lock. A heavy, old-fashioned bolt. He shot it home. He was in a room. An old nursery. Moonlight streamed through a tall, mullioned window, illuminating dusty furniture covered in white sheets. A rocking horse. A crib. It smelled like flowers that had been dead for hundreds of years. He backed away from the door. He could hear them outside. Not running, just walking. A calm, measured scraping of their feet on the hardwood floor. Then, a new sound. They were dragging their nails down the door. "Come out, little rabbit," a woman's voice whispered from the other side. "We only want a taste." Something hit the door, hard. The wood groaned. They were trying to break it down. Jake looked around, frantic. The window. It was his only chance. He ran to it, fumbling with the antique latch. It was rusted shut. He pulled, grunting out loud. It was made much more difficult by the fact his palms were sweating buckets. It wouldn't budge. Crack. A long, vertical split appeared in the door. A single ivory finger, tipped with a black, claw-like nail, poked through. Jake screamed. He looked around. A chair. A heavy child's chair. He grabbed it, lifted it high, and smashed it against the window. The glass didn't just break. It exploded outward in a cascade of glittering shards. Cold, fresh, normal night air hit his face. He looked down. It was a 2-story drop. But directly below him was a massive, overgrown azalea bush, thick and tangled. The door behind him splintered and burst open. There Valerius stood in the doorway, framed in the wreckage. His face was no longer handsome. It was a twisted mask of inhuman rage. A smear of bright, arterial red stained his chin. "You have ruined the etiquette," he roared. Jake didn't hesitate. He put one leg over the sill and just fell. He hit the bush with a bone-jarring crash. Thorns and branches ripped at his hoodie, at his face. He felt a sharp, searing pain in his side as a branch impaled him. But adrenaline surged, a fire that burned out the pain. He tore himself free. He landed on the damp grass, scrambled to his feet, and ran. He ran without looking back, even as a terrible, soul-shaking shriek of pure bestial fury tore through the Halloween night. A sound that no human throat could ever produce. He ran, vaulting the iron fence. He didn't stop for his bike. He just ran, with his torn sides screaming and his lungs on fire. He ran past the cobblestones, past the dim streetlights, back towards the sound of giggling children and inflatable pumpkins. He didn't slow down until he burst through his own front door, slamming it and bolting it, collapsing against it in the silent, empty hallway. His parents were still out. He was safe. He slid down the door, his whole body shaking in violent, uncontrollable tremors. He was alive. Sarah, Mike, they were gone. He was covered in scratches. His side was bleeding, but he was alive. He sat there for a long time, listening to his own laboured breathing. The clock on the wall ticked. The normal, boring sound was the most beautiful thing he'd ever heard. After an hour, or maybe it was a minute, he finally stood up, his legs feeling like jelly. He had to call the police. But what would he tell them? A vampire party? They'd lock him up. He flicked on the hallway light and froze. He couldn't believe what he saw. On the small, polished table by the door, a table that had been completely empty when he'd left, sat a single, small envelope. It wasn't cream-coloured. This one was as black as a grave. His hand, shaking so badly he could barely control it, reached out. It was made of the same thick, parchment-like material. He didn't need to open it. He knew. He did anyway. Inside was a single, matching black card. The script was the same scratched handwriting, only this time it was written in a glistening, still wet red. Such spirit, such vitality. A pity you couldn't stay for the finale. We must do this again, very soon. V. And beneath the signature, pressed into the very grain of the card, was a single, perfect, dark red fingerprint.